All right. I've spoken for 2 minutes on mute. Sorry about that, guys. But again, I am super excited about today's session. Very welcome, everyone, for joining us. And thanks for letting me know that I was on mute. But just wanted to give you a little background about what we are doing today is we are interviewing none other than Dan Dimmer, CEO Sinchie, to discuss about the end of integration, Dataware, data mesh, data fabric, and much more. A little about Dan. He's the CEO and co-founder of Sinchie and is a business leader and pioneer in data solutions and the emerging Dataware category. Don't forget to ask questions to Dan about Dataware, data integration, data mesh, data fabric, and also Dan has spoken at many big conferences such as TechCrunch, Innovate, Strata, and more. So can't wait to hear his thoughts today. Also, very quickly, wanted to let you guys know that we are giving away an iPad Air, and it was Dan's idea to give away iPad Air to someone who has engaged a lot and also asked some relevant questions today in the session. But do not forget to type in hashtag Sinchi in the chat to enter the raffle and also register for the event. Let's go. Yes, finally I can see. uh, yes, you can. Oh, you couldn't hear me, but now you can. So thank you very much. Without any further ado, let's have our guest here. Hey Dan, welcome to
Hey,
the Rabbit Show.
hey, thanks for
Sorry for
having
the
me.
first 2 minutes. We were on mute.
I was wondering if it was on my side. I'm seeing he's talking, but I'm not hearing anything. I was quickly trying to troubleshoot, but yeah, all good.
Yeah. No, I was on mute, I guess. And very excited to have you on the show. I see a lot of people who have already joined us and can't wait to hear more about Dataware, data mesh, data fabric, and much more. So let's go on that. But to start with, why not introduce yourself and also tell us a little about Sinchi and what you guys do?
Sure. Yeah. So hey everyone. So I'm Dan. I'm the CEO co-founder at Sinchie. My background prior to co-founding the company is I used to work in a bunch of big companies, mostly in financial services. So think big global banks that have lots of complexity and they spend a lot of time doing integration. And that's where I met Karan, who is my co-founder and our CTO. And one of the things that we realized is that in spite of technological advancements, there's always some hype cycle, some new technologies coming to market. As it seemed like everything was getting more complicated over time, and decided to do something about it once we saw an opportunity, and that brought us to where we are today. So we founded the company. We've been in the market for I don't know, about 4 years now, and we've had a pretty good ride so far, and lots of exciting things ahead of us for sure. And what we do is we sell a Dataware platform. Dataware is actually an old idea, but it was kind of talking about science fiction back when it was originally conceived by Gordon Everest in the 80s. But we basically have a technology platform that implements that vision, and it allows organizations to liberate data from applications and allow data to be managed in its natural form as an interconnected network where integration is obsolete.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And thanks for that information. Also, since we are here, I've heard of so many leaders talking about data engineering space evolving very quickly. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
It's definitely evolving quickly, and what's interesting is like I've been around for a little while. I have a couple of gray hairs, as you can see. I've seen a lot of different waves, a lot of buzz around new technologies, and they come and go in terms of excitement, and but some are such that they're bigger and they stick, if that makes any sense. So. But I almost see that as a once in a lifetime opportunity. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about Dataware, right? Hardware, software, Dataware, and software changed the world and continues to do that. And I think Dataware is going to do the same. So that being said, everyone talks about data, has been talking about data for decades. And if that's your specialty, you're in a good place for sure.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Also, if you want to simplify Dataware for our audience, how do you do that?
To simplify it for the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the traditional approach is that you have this thing called software, and these software applications, not just one, there's many. they all manage data separate from each other. And you have to do this thing called integration to share data between them, doing things like APIs and ETLs and doing reconciliations and all that stuff. And today that consumes half of the IT capacity pretty much of every company on the planet. Large enterprise, mid-size, even startups have many apps that they have to integrate. What Dataware does is it decouples that data management from the individual applications so that the applications of the future, let's talk about the future ones for a second, can be managed without needing to manage data. They can collaborate on data, just like how we can use Google Drive and I can create a presentation and I could give you access to it and we can both work on it together, but we're not sending copies back and forth as email attachments. We're not integrating, we're collaborating. So that's the simplest thing, is think of it as like Google Drive, but for data, where it's used by people and applications. I don't know if that was a simple explanation or not. But
Yeah, no, 100%. Very, very clear. Also, we have a lot of questions coming here from our audience. Let's take this one, a very interesting one from Scott. Scott, finally you can hear me. So if I already have a data mesh or data fabric, why would I also need Dataware? Very interesting.
Right. So a data mesh is more of a people and process phenomena, assuming you're talking about the more recent incarnation of that term. And it talks about the extensibility of domain-driven design and borrowing that from the world of software architecture into the world of data architecture, but largely focused on analytics. So instead of building a giant data lake in the central warehouse, is decentralize that into data products, organize into domains, and enable autonomy yet interoperability across the data products. That's cool, but that's on the analytics plane. It doesn't change how you build applications. You add a new app, you still have to do integrations. The data is still managed by the individual applications. And but the concept of a domain-driven approach to enable federation makes a ton of sense. So you could extend that concept beyond the analytical plane into the operational plane, and you could use Dataware to bring that vision to life. So it's not like it's one or the other. You can have the data mesh principles using Dataware to bring it to life, and then the data fabric. And again, these terms are so overloaded, and there's lots of confusion, and it's actually quite funny or sad, depending on how I feel in the day. But I guess what I see as the majority of interpretations of the term data fabric is it's a technology platform play that simplifies integration. So think of it as data mesh, federated data as a product, and data fabric as the simplification of integration, and Dataware as the liberation of data from applications, and you can combine them all together. And that's essentially what the Sinchie platform is doing, is it's blending all these into a unified platform.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And obviously it clarifies a few questions for us as well, because like you mentioned, we've heard so much about data fabric, data mesh, Dataware as well. So it's good to get it from the horse's mouth itself. So thanks for that. Also, according to you, what makes it a sea change in the data management? How does that work?
What makes it a sea change is the fact that it is just the beginning of I'll tell a little story. If we go back to like 1938, I think was the first computer program. So let's talk about software before we talk about Dataware, in terms of just to get a sense of the scale of impact that this is going to have. But so picture a world without software. You've got hardware, you've got machines. And if there's not a machine for that, you can build a machine for that. There's a machine for everything, right? Kind of like an app for that. If you don't like the way the machine behaves, what do? Well, you have to physically alter the machine. You have to either manufacture a new machine or refactor that machine. And the machine does what the machine does. It just it's static. It's not programmable. Software comes along and says, well, wait a minute. You can manufacture a machine such that it can listen to the instructions, the program, after it's been manufactured, and it can adapt its behavior in accordance to that based on an instruction set. That's it sounds like black magic. That's like, there's no way that that's going to work. That's not going to scale. What's the use case for software? But look at what's happened, right? Software continues to eat the world, as they say, and it continues to bring disruption. But that was just the beginning. The idea that a machine can have its behavior altered after the fact through programs changed everything. It wasn't just, a hype cycle trend. It was like world changing. It was a true game changer. And I see Dataware as the same concept, but going to the next level, where today, every application is a data platform, but tomorrow they don't have to be. It's the liberation of the data from the individual applications means apps still exist, but they don't have the data complexity, and you don't have this integration phenomena. It's kind of like the world changing from a world where every electronic device needs its own power plant to now you have a power grid, and that allows the phone to fit in your pocket. That wouldn't have been possible. You can't fit a nuclear power plant in your pocket. So it's that big of a deal. So it's we talk about some of the benefits to our customers today and how you can get started with this, but where is this all going to go? It's actually a bit hard to imagine. A world where data is decoupled from applications is a world where people have control over their data, and a world where experiences and applications are truly composable, and that's pretty damn exciting.
Yeah, I think great explanation there in terms of how it is a sea change in the data management. It does make a lot of sense. We have a lot of questions. I don't want to miss on the questions that are coming from
Sure,
the
yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
Let's take one from the YouTube, and this one's kind of interesting to me. Where do you see the future of data fabric in the next 2 to 3 years?
Let me actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a visual on that, because that's a good question. Give me one second here. If you want to pull up my screen.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can see that okay. But the data fabric, I think, is ultimately the simplification of integration, right? So if you think of integration, you have your incumbents, the legacy technologies that move data from A to B and from B to C over APIs and ETLs, and so you've got all the vendors that have strong integration capabilities that are operating in the space, and data fabric. Now to get to the question, I think what we're already seeing is the bifurcation of this market. Those that are analytics only, where you basically connect data in to drive reporting analytics, get insights, apply AI, ML, et cetera, versus those who can do that, but also support operational and transactional use cases. So that's the space that we play in, but we're not alone. We're not the only data fabric that has operational applicability. But what I ultimately see is the rise of Dataware, and you can see there's a small number of companies here where you can originate data. You can have data be born, liberated of the applications, where you can have one app that's using data or 1,000 apps, and there's still just one copy of the data. So I see really the Dataware kind of swallowing the data fabric, which ultimately replaces the whole paradigm of point-to-point integrations. That being said, there's a lot of integrations that are already built. They're not going to go away anytime soon. So it's really more about intercepting the new projects. But that's what I see. I see convergence, consolidation, expansion beyond analytics, a growing awareness of you got to fix how data is managed, and all these symptomatic reliefs that we've been chasing for the past number of decades simply fade away. You don't have the symptom anymore. You've cured the underlying disease.
Okay. That's pretty cool explanation there. So thanks for that. Thanks for the question, Daksh. Definitely, that's where you see the at least the future of data fabric in the next 2 to 3 years. Another very interesting question here from Aditya Nimade. How does Sinchie solve the problem of data integration across various apps into one? Interesting.
Yeah, so the whole reason you have to do integration is because you have apps each separately managing data. So if you imagine building 3 new applications from the ground up, which you're not always going to be able to do, but let's imagine you were, not having 3 data stores, having one record of the data, even if each of these applications has its own app-specific model, such that they're all, one can insert a customer, the other can book a transaction on behalf of that customer. The next could do some type of KYC check on the customer, but the customer isn't copied 3 times. They're all just interacting with it via the fabric. So that you're avoiding the app-to-app integrations in the world of new applications and new data. But the reality is you can't just start from scratch. all of our customers, they have, sometimes thousands of legacy systems, and they have sometimes billions of dollars invested in existing integrations. And what are they going to do about that? So first of all, for their new applications, for the new data, they can use this new approach. If you're going to build 3 new apps, don't build 3 new data silos and then do integration. But if your 3 new apps need to connect either to retrieve or to change data from one of your existing systems, the traditional approach is you're building 3 new integrations to your legacy platform, whereas with this approach, you're building 1. So think of it as when you need to integrate my existing applications and my existing data, I can do it once and be done with it. So I can reframe that integration as a liberation, because from that point forward, it's on the network. It's connected to the Dataware. And I can show a quick example of that, because usually I find with this stuff, it's hard to get your head around with just words. Visuals help, but nothing works best other than showing working live software to make it feel a lot real and understandable.
Okay. That's a very nice question. Also, another, since we are on this topic of Dataware, a very curious question I've seen a lot of folks asking this. So, who are the main users of Dataware technology?
Yeah, so there's people who are building applications that are now leveraging Dataware to avoid all that data complexity. There are people who are integrating applications, who are now liberating data by integrating the data into Dataware such that it doesn't need to be integrated again. So they're basically enabling the evolution away from copy-based integration to access-based collaboration. So again, we have developers, we have integrators, and then we have business users. So today, business users, they interact with the applications through the app-specific interfaces. They'll log into Salesforce, they'll log into your billing system, but they can't go to the data behind the applications. They're constrained by the application's functionality, whereas Dataware includes a data browser, just like the World Wide Web includes a web browser, same concept, where the business user can continue to use the application interfaces, but they can now push those interfaces aside and see the data. In fact, they can even change the data. The only requirement is that you need access, which is the only legitimate requirement. So business users can now interact directly with data through a metadata-driven dynamic end user experience. And then finally, people who own data. So today, if you own data and I want to collaborate with you, if I'm not using Dataware, I'm giving you a copy. Even if we have a legal contract, I'm giving you a copy. I've lost control over that because I can't control your ability to then send other people copies or to misinterpret it or whatnot. So by using Dataware, it's using this concept of access, not copies, where I'm collaborating through access in its real time instead of copy-based integration. So again, it's people who build applications, people who integrate applications, people who use applications, and people who own data.
Okay, pretty cool. Also, one question that I have is, what types of organizations are using Dataware currently, and does it scale?
No, it doesn't scale. No, I'm joking. So kind of our organization. So we started in financial services. We've expanded beyond that. And again, when I'm speaking about Dataware here, I'm talking about like our company's experience, because again, Dataware is a bigger shift beyond just one company, one platform. But like our customers originally were big global financial institutions, organizations that we know just from our past lives, like both Karan and myself. But since then, over the past couple of years, we've been expanding into retail and healthcare, and also going from large, massive enterprise to mid-sized enterprise, and heck, we even use it to run our company when we were 2 people. So anywhere from 2 people to 300,000 people is kind of the range where Dataware could be applicable. But the majority of our customers are ones that do have a lot of complexity, a lot of legacy. They're dealing with multi-cloud. They're this integration tax is limiting their agility, and that's why they get excited about the promise of Dataware.
Okay, pretty cool. Another question, very interesting question that I had here from Dustin. Let's take from Dustin. What's an example of how a user might use your UI to manage or update data?
Okay, so can I actually share my screen and show?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so if you want to pull that up. So I love this question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into, I'm just going to use Salesforce as an example of an application. So first I'm going to create data in Salesforce, and then I'm going to show you how it connects into the Dataware platform, provides a user interface to see it, but then you can even update it as well. So I'll show you kind of the round trip here. So I'm into Salesforce, and I'm just going to create a new contact. So this is just the sandbox environment, so I can muck with it. So I'll add myself here. So I'll just put my first name, last name. I'll just pick the one account that's in this environment. I'll put my title here, and I'll just put my email address. I'm just going to go ahead and save that. So I'm going to leave the phone number blank. I'm going to leave all this other LinkedIn blank. I'm going to leave everything else blank. Okay, so I've saved that, but this is already connected into Dataware. So we've already done that mapping, and that's a simple mapping that a builder will basically connect it to Salesforce, and they'll basically map their semantic model to the way it's modeled in Salesforce. And here I'm using Salesforce, but I can connect it to a mainframe or a text file or an Excel spreadsheet or an on-prem database or anything. And now I'm in Sinchie. So this is what we call the network map, where I'm seeing essentially all the knowledge that I have access to. And it's all organized into domains. So what you're seeing here with these little colors is domain. So for example, like there's our compliance domain. And if I expand that, you can see there's a bunch of objects in here, like for example, our company policies. And if I zoom out, you can see, there's a bunch of different colors and they're all kind of connected together. But let me find the corresponding data set. So that data in Salesforce, I mapped to an object called people, and that exists in this domain called contacts. But let's actually go into the data, right? Because this is just a map. This is like the satellite view on Google Maps. Sometimes you want to go down to the street view, right? So now I'm in the street view, and what I'm seeing is the data in a grid style experience, right? So there's rows, there's columns, and here's the record that I just created. But remember, I created that in Salesforce. I didn't create this in Sinchie. But the record below that was not created in Salesforce. It was created in HubSpot. And because I have access, and it's not a free-for-all, this is tightly controlled, I can go ahead and even add another record right here, right now. And that record was born inside of Sinchie. It's autonomous data. So, there's three people coming from three different systems. Interesting. And notice that some of these fields are read-only, some of them are editable. Like, for example, I can change the title, or I can change my LinkedIn. So let me populate my LinkedIn. I'll just grab that in the clipboard, and I'll update that here. And I can even update the title here. So that was set in Salesforce. So I'll just change it to, a bunch of random characters here. And if I go back into Salesforce and look at the record, you can see that, and let me just refresh because it's probably a bit of latency between them. But what you'll see is the data coming in with the changes even coming in and propagating. And if you remember, I typed in my email address, but hold on, I see my phone number here, I see my address here, I see a bunch of other information. Oh. And I made these changes not through Salesforce. I didn't even need a Salesforce license to be able to do that. And if I go back into Sinchie, because it's a time machine, like what Dataware is doing by using that metadata-driven approach, I can look at the collaboration log and I can see every change made by every character. So I could see it was created in Salesforce, and then Zoom Info came in and it enriched it. It found a profile photo, it found a phone number, and that's what then fed back into Salesforce. And then you'll recall that I populated the LinkedIn, if I can find that here, the LinkedIn URL. And you can see there's a bunch of other updates going back and forth. So they're basically keeping in sync with each other. Again, this is now blended, right? Because while some of these fields are syncing to and from Salesforce, if I update this field or this field or this field, it will push it into HubSpot. Or if I update here, it will stay here because it exists only here. So what it allows me to do as a user is just understand that I'm looking at people, I'm editing people, and my access is controlled. But behind the scenes is all this web of complexity, right? If I update this field, it's going to update it in this system. If I update this field, it's going to update it in a different system. But now my experience as a business user is it's just people, and we got attributes, and there's some attributes I can see, some I can't. And maybe I want to have different experiences, right? This is a grid view. That's great for doing bulk updates. But let me open up a 360 view. I'll just open this up in a new tab. So I want to take the same record, but I just want to have a different layout in it. So what this is doing is it's turning it into a form. And there now you can see it's rendering my profile photo. And there's the title, right? And here's I don't know, there's a bunch of other information here. It's just a different layout on the same data, but the same permissions, the same controls, everything's the same. So I can update data in Salesforce if I want. I can update data in Sinchie if I want,
Nice.
and they keep in sync.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And definitely people love the demo there. Mike Nash says, love the visualization view and the different views for different user visual preferences. So that's pretty interesting because sometimes it's like, oh, I can't, I prefer another UI. So you have so many other variations to it, which makes it more unique and more interesting for the audience out there.
Yeah.
A quick one here from George Frickin, very interesting question. How many data sets can you visualize? And that was a cool neural network visualization. So yeah.
So exactly 7, no more. No, I'm joking. I'm full of bad jokes today. So yeah, you can, any data that you can connect or create inside of the platform, you can visualize. And again, visualize typically means that I can just see it. But in a Dataware context, whatever you can see, you can change if you have access, right? So these are editable visualizations. They're not static reports or anything like that. That's the old way of thinking. But so really any data set can be visualized through an infinite number of experiences. Actually, I want to show one other example of that because I think it's such a powerful idea. It's one of the things that I get excited about, the fact that you have this composability of experiences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show 3 different skins on top of a single piece of data. So I'm just going to open up employees, and I'm going to open up some experiences that are here. I'm going to open up an org chart and an org network. And then give me 1 sec. I'll actually open up a 4th one. So I'm going to have 4 ways of experiencing the very same data. Okay, so here you're seeing a bunch of employees, rows, columns, and who works for who, when did they start, all that good stuff. And there's different views, and it's like a grid view, right? Kind of mimic a spreadsheet where you can have different layouts on that, different filters, etc. So that's one way of interacting with the data, where I can see it, I can change it. The next is I can open up a record and see a 360 view. So I just pick myself, and this is everything about me, where it's pulling in connected data, right? There's my bio, there's my career goals, there's my personality profile. Here's my contact information. Here's open work and out of office events and performance reviews and employment agreements and even engagement. Like if I download a white paper or subscribe to our newsletter, you can see I started following our own company on LinkedIn back in 2018, which was worth 10 points. So it pulls together that view. But this is now zooming in on a single employee. Well, here's looking at the same employees, but this is, in an org chart style view, right? Where you can see there's me and my direct reports, and I can collapse things and move things around, and I can click on it to see more information, and I can edit it. And again, there's no separate copies of this data, so I can edit it through here, I can edit it through here, I can edit it through here. But we don't think of Sinchie as a hierarchy. It's part of our organizational design. We think of it as a network. So you saw earlier the network of connected data sets and structures. Well, this is the network of connected people.
Wow.
Because I'm not on top of the company. I'm in the center, like I'm a connector, right? So there's me. I could be at the top, at the bottom, at the left, and the right. My role is to really facilitate the connectivity between the different pillars of our company. Like there's our employee success, and there's our customer success, and there's our category success, and there's our product success, and there's our sales, and so on and so forth, right? So it's the same data though. But so for example, like I can see me here. And I can pop open from the satellite view down to the street view. And now I'm looking at this data. So whether I got here from here or through here or through here or through here, it's all the same data. It doesn't need to be copied. So what other experiences can you imagine on a collection of employees? It's literally infinite. And now you don't have this friction of every experience requires millions of dollars of integration.
Okay. And it's pretty cool. The visualization is definitely fantastic. What you've just shown us in terms of, it's not a hierarchy, but it's a network, and it's more about you being the connector throughout. So 100%, it's amazing. We have a very cool We have a question actually just around that itself from Aditi. How does Sinchi create that universal data network? Interesting.
Yeah, good question. So it's created by people and is done iteratively over time and collaboratively in a federated model. So if you have access to Dataware in your organization, let's say, and you have access to the environment, you can go in and you can create a data set, and you can create a second data set, and you can connect those two data sets together. And then you can give access to one of those two data sets to others in your team. Or others in other teams within the same company. And those people can do the same. They can create their own data sets, and they can create a second data set and link to that. But then that data set can be linked to your data set. And they can link and extend your data that you shared with them by giving them access without them needing to give you access back to their extensions of data. So it's very much a crowdsourcing of a data model at an enterprise scale, because if you try it, like one of the reasons why the data mesh is so exciting is the alternative, which is, the central lake or lake house or warehouse. Who the heck is going to build the data model for that? Like that's so friggin' complicated, and it changes, right? Like who's the mastermind who knows every nuance of the entire end-to-end business? That person doesn't exist. It's in the minds of the dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees. That's where the knowledge is. So you need to harness that, right? It's crowdsourcing of metadata and doing it in a way that respects controls. And that's how you get, that's why Wikipedia is accurate. That's why, Waze tells you that you're about to hit traffic, right? This is the phenomena that gives you the quality of data that's timely and up to date is crowdsourcing. So that data network is done, one user at a time, one project at a time. And even for us, like we use it to run our company, where we've been doing it for 4 years now, and we don't have any silos. We don't do any integrations within the company. We do integrations outside of the company. But again, we look at it as we're liberating that data. But I didn't build the model. The company built the model. Everyone contributed. And we have what I think is a beautiful model. And what's beautiful about it is it's never static. It changes all the time. Because, hey, we're growing, we're learning, we're evolving, and we're getting new contexts and perspectives. It's like an organism, just like how your brain rewires itself. It's amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool. Thanks for that question, Aditi. Also, we have another one here from Joe. Joe is asking, heard this, he's just saying, heard this term yesterday, the data plumbers, they do that work. And also he had a question, which I wanted to pick here. Graph technology driving this, which is it? Tygraph, not graph? Or is it something else?
So it's actually our engine. So what you're seeing is just the Sinchie engine, but it's not just a graph database. It's because you have to think of graph and relational and document and columnar and all these different persistence technologies, each having pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses. What Dataware is really doing is unifying that into a common platform instead of you having to choose where to struggle, right? Because sometimes you want transactions, you want ACID, you want referential integrity, but I want schema flexibility and I want the power of inference. Why can't I have it all? Just like if I plug my phone into the wall, behind that wall is this complicated decentralized power grid where you got nuclear power plants and hydro and geothermal and like all this stuff behind the scenes, but I just plugged it into the wall and it just worked, right? That's really what Dataware is trying to do is to simplify and standardize how a person or an application interacts with data, not just accesses it, but how does it create it? How does it manage it? How does it change it? So in order to do that, behind the scenes, it's going to use graph concepts, but it's not a graph database. It's much more. So Dataware is a superset.
Okay, very cool. That's what he says. Thanks for that question, Joe. Also, we have one interesting question from Aditya Nimade, or how are permissions handled for a particular app to access a set of data where privacy to view certain data to certain apps is so crucial nowadays? Very interesting.
Yeah, and one of the things that Dataware does that isn't really possible with the app-centric approach is it moves the control over who has access away from individual applications to such that it's in the data itself. It's self-controlling. Because imagine if you had, customer data, and maybe you're a bank and you have a customer's balance or something, or maybe you're a healthcare provider and you have someone's medical records. the fact that there's something about me. Let's take my account balance or something, and if that account balance is needed by 30 applications inside of the bank for the bank to do what it needs to do in order to serve me as a customer, that's 30 solutions that are each separately trying to control who has access to see or change that data. How secure is that? Well, it's only as secure as the weakest link, right? It's it's like a bank vault has one door for a good reason, is to strengthen that door instead of having 1,000 doors. So the shift to Dataware changes how you really think about the controls. It's who has access to see this data using data-driven rules, regardless of what application they're interfacing with. So go through app 1, go through app 2, run a report in Tableau or Qlik or Power BI, run a direct query, hit an API endpoint. I'm Dan, and I'm trying to find my boss's salary. No matter what I do, I cannot do that because I do not have access. So,
Right.
And that's not possible in a world where the data is just replicated and integrated. And, that's why there's so much complexity and there's this illusion of controls. And so that's one of the things that I'm actually most excited about, like the enablement of control. Like the thesis of our company was, we firmly believe that in the future, people will take back control over their data. Like today, no one has any control over their data. It's just an illusion, right?
Sure.
But that society can't be built on on the inability to control one's data. So it's inevitable. I actually believe it's inevitable. If we didn't do anything, if no one else, like someone else will do this. This is the future. The only question is who, when, how, and what are the trade-offs and how do you get there and all that good stuff. But the enablement of data autonomy, where people and companies have control over their data, is what I'm most excited about. Like that's why we have our not-for-profit. That's why we're working on standards like zero copy integration, and that's kind of the underpinning principle of all of this.
Yep. Okay. That's very, the approach that you have is amazing, Dan. So I can't wait to see how that goes forward. And very interesting question. Thanks for that, Aditya. I see a lot of hashtag which says grid sheet. I assume that's because you shared one and people like it. I also saw a lot of people putting in hashtag grid sheet. I don't know though the giveaway is for hashtag Sinchie and if you've registered for the event. So, but hashtag grid sheet definitely, because I like that grid sheet which Dan showed us. Also, very quickly, Dan, I wanted to also know how will Dataware impact how I will frame it very nicely. How will Dataware impact data and application professionals? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think what it does, it creates convergence, right? Like if you think of organizations today, you've got your data teams, you've got your business teams, you've got your technology teams, and you've got, these are all silos. But as the data becomes divorced from individual applications, it actually emerges as kind of like it is the application. And that's why we have these apps in the first place. So from an app developer perspective, the ability to delegate a lot of the complexity so that they can focus on the actual experience of the business process, right? And from the data engineer perspective, the ability to kind of design it to model how the business actually works, knowing that it can be continuously remodeled to keep pace as the business naturally evolves. So you're going to see closer collaboration between the data people, the business people, and the application builders and everything. And they're all going to be using data as their source of collaboration, right? So it's collaborating through the data, which is pretty cool. So you'll see not only data silos being broken down, but even organizational silos being broken down.
Okay, that's interesting. Also, we have this pretty interesting question here from Mike. So let's take this one. Okay. With the explosion of data and data tools, where do you see the data landscape evolving, and how is Sinchie ahead of this curve?
Yeah, so the trend that I continue to see, and I think it's past the point of peak complexity, is that it's so friggin' complicated. Like if you ever see those pictures that people share on LinkedIn that show like the data landscape, where it shows, how it's all compartmentalized into these different categories and all these vendors and everything. And it's like, whoa, it's like someone just threw up all over my screen. There's more that get added over time, not less. And, the poor people who are trying to get stuff done in this ecosystem. It's incredibly complicated, and the reason we named the company Sinchie is it's a play on the word cinch, which means simple. So what inspired really to do something is the fact that new technology is making the world a more complicated place when in fact it should be making it a simpler place, and that's the shift. Right? And so actually I would say that Dataware is part of a bigger shift, which is the simplification revolution, right? Because I don't know about you all, but I'm sick of all this unnecessary complexity. And I do believe that in the not too distant future, technologies will be evaluated on what it takes away, not what it adds. And that's true advancement. So coming back to the question of how are we ahead of the curve, I think the fact that that's kind of an underlying principle of the company, which is everything that we do, we're making sure that it's removing complexity. That's our grounding. If it doesn't take away complexity, we're not going to do it. And I think that's a pretty unique perspective.
Okay, that's amazing. Thanks for that question, Michael. So an interesting question here from Scott Taylor. If I have Dataware, what parts of the data stack can I get rid of? What do you replace?
So this is an interesting one because there's in the future versus in the present. Because if I'm, let's say, a big organization and I have 10,000 applications and I have 100,000 integrations and I've got everything from mainframes to SaaS applications, what does Dataware replace? None of that. What it really does is it stops you from adding more integrations, stops you from adding more silos, stops you, and that stop is reversing an exponential growth, not a linear growth, and it starts to actually collapse it in. But a different way to think of it is imagine if you were building a business from the ground up. And bear with me for a second. The ability, and actually, you know what? I want to show a visual, if you don't mind. Again,
yeah, sure.
Some of these are just so much easier to explain with pictures. Can you pull up my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine you're building a new organization. You're a founder. You have an idea. You're going to bring it to market, and you're going to basically build your business. And it's without Dataware. So you're going to build an app for that. You either buy or build. Every app is going to store data. That's the problem. Therefore, you're going to do integration as a way of working around that flaw, because they're all going to need to know customer. They're all going to need to know account and employee and so on and so forth. So you're going to do APIs and ETLs to basically move data around between the application data stores. You're going to have gaps between the apps. You're going to fill those with desktop tools like spreadsheets with macros. And big enterprise organizations have not one or two of these. They have thousands of them running critical business processes that also need data. So you got red lines, you've got green lines. And then how do I get insights out of that data, which is, so far it's just keeping the applications working, right? I'm doing the integrations for operational use. But if I want to get intelligence out of that, well, I need analytics, right? So I need to build a data mart or a data warehouse or a data mesh or something, a lake house, something. To get it so that I can pull the data together in an organized form to understand the connections between that, the insights from that. And if I'm successful in that, well, I'm going to need to feed those insights back into the applications. Otherwise, what's the point, right? If I'm allowing you to apply for a mortgage and then I use analytics to predict that you're going to likely end in default, I want to know that when you're applying for the mortgage, not the next day or something. So I'm going to do things like reverse ETL. And well, hold on, this is a lot of lines. So how do you govern this, right? So and the answer is you add more lines. You add metadata management and master data management and information security monitoring. And so you've got all of these, this complex web that now, let's say you want to add a new app on top of this, a new capability. Well, you're going to add a new app, a new data store, lots of red lines, lots of orange lines, lots of blue lines, lots of green lines. That's a lot of lines, right? And the more you have, the more lines you have. And those lines are not cheap. Those are expensive. And so that's if you're using, all the unicorn companies and you're using all the stuff, but for whatever reason, you're forbidden to use Dataware. Whereas if you now go back, right, so to the same beginning and you want the same outcome, but you now are building this, instead of on a house of cards, it's on the new foundation. You're building it on top of Dataware. Well, those apps no longer manage data. They collaborate on data and delegate that complexity to Dataware, where it has that secret advantage of it doesn't have the silos, right? And don't confuse this. This is not all the data in a single table or anything. Like, it's still decentralized and federated, and there's that whole governance around that. But from the app perspective, there's just data. Whether it's, this is inserting a record, this is updating it, this is reading it, this is deleting it. The permissions are not at the app layer, they're at the data layer, and can this person do that or not? And that's a universal truth regardless of their access point. And the person can now log in via the Dataware browser, so they can still use the apps, but they don't have to. They can just sweep that aside and go direct to the data. Now, this is an extreme scenario of a company in the future. Just like today, a company can be born on the cloud. They don't need a data center. That would have been unimaginable not that long ago, right? But that happens all the time today. We don't have a data center. But what about the fact that, what if you already had a data center meeting? What if you already had applications, right? Then that's where the fabric comes in. So the fabric is really a bridge that allows you to liberate the data from the traditional, application silos. Take your Salesforce data, take your Workday data, take data out of your mainframe or your core banking platform or your spreadsheet, and basically achieve synchronization either in or out or bidirectionally or multi-directionally, such that there's one link to the network. So, and by linking that once, whether you add 4 applications or 4 trillion applications, there's no more integrations.
Very cool.
So
I think, that's a very good explanation in terms of how you showed before the Dataware and after it. I think this is truly a game changer. But thanks for sharing detailed information about that. And
sure, yeah.
Awesome. Also, Scott Era has hashtag stop the silos, which is very true.
Yes.
Also, one question that I had in, this has been the talk of the town as well. Like, we've seen so many versions of modern data stack. How do you, I know for a fact you've mentioned as well, like, we see so many different categories and all of those things, but what do you suggest is an ideal one, or should there be, is there ever been an ideal, modern data stack?
So I don't know, if you go back to, again, that software and hardware analogy, forget about Dataware for a second, the modern machine pre-software. You can talk about different ways of building machines in a better, faster, cheaper way. Maybe you introduce these plastics and all these things, but you're still making rigid machines. So you can have dialogues about how to make machines better, faster, cheaper. But then separately, there's now the ability to have programmable machines. So which one's modern? To me, the idea of building machines in a faster way that are not programmable is not quite modern when you can make them programmable. So I kind of look at it that same way. And there's kind of these two tracks, right? There's the app-centric thinking and innovations in that space where you have that constraint. Apps manage data. If you leave that constraint in place, you can have modern data stacks and this evolution. That's where you get that growth of all those that vendor vomit that I was talking about earlier. If you buy into the thesis that data should be liberated from applications, then that's almost like a whole new ecosystem. It's a whole new way of thinking. So you have to decide for yourself which one's modern, right? There's the two tracks. But I don't know, software's been pretty cool.
Okay, that's amazing. Thanks for that. I like your approach with different things, how you look at those things. So very nice, Dan. Also, I'm just looking for one question that I had here, and it was kind of interesting. You're from George Firkin. I think I didn't ask this one. Would Sinchie be able to integrate with data catalog as well to track what data set is used where and by what user system?
Yeah, so definitely, because a data catalog, again, if you even look at that picture that I had earlier where it's in that governance bucket, it's an application that's going to have to do integration to suck in the metadata. So you can connect that just like you can connect any application, and hey, metadata is also data. So you can absolutely do that. But know that one of the capabilities of Dataware, and again, you can build your own Dataware platform. You don't need to buy one. You can build one, just like you can build your own software. You can build your own hardware, right? It's the same concept. But one of the, I think, core capabilities of a Dataware platform, regardless of which one you use or if you're building your own, is the ability to have metadata activation. So what that means is, as you're building structures, as you're building connections, as you're liberating data, the metadata is available as data such that it can be activated. It can be used in different contexts. So think of it as new systems that are built on Dataware. You don't need the data catalog because it's self-cataloging. That being said, you've got a bunch of legacy systems and you still want benefits of that. So you can connect the catalog to get that unified view, right? So I want to catalog my old apps and I want my new stuff to be self-cataloging, and I want those to come together into a unified catalog. So that's a pretty common use case.
Okay, that's amazing. Thanks for that question. Also, Dan, I know people would still want to learn more about Sinchie and how this platform works. Do they have like an opportunity where they can go and try Sinchie in some way, like a demo or anything on the website?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
And we'll make that easier for people in the future. But if you go to the website, there's some buttons at the top in terms of requesting a free trial, so you can definitely do that. What will actually happen is we'll reach out and have a conversation. But ultimately, before anyone buys it, they're going to get their hands on it. There's no question about that. And one of the things that we're also doing, because there's the Sinchie company, and then there's the Data Collaboration Alliance, which is more than just Sinchie. We founded it, but it's an alliance right now of privacy thought leaders and a whole bunch of others that are collaborating to create open standards behind this, right? So the idea is that zero copy integration is the new way of building digital solutions that doesn't compromise your ability to control your own data. And that's something that should be ratified as a standard in Canada over the next couple of weeks, which is our home country, and then taken internationally. And if anyone's interested in joining that and contributing to that, you can check out datacollaboration.org. So ultimately, what you're going to see is, this will be an open standard that enables these benefits of the interconnectedness of data without the loss of control that the conventional approach has been, eating away at for the past decades.
Okay, pretty cool. Sorry, Dan, my internet ran out, so I came back again. But audio information there. Also, if people want to reach out to you and learn more about Sinchie, Dataware, what's next, what are you building,
Sure.
where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so there's you can always hit me up on LinkedIn. Feel free to just direct connect, message me. But you can also check out sinchi.com if you're interested in the Sinchie platform. And we also have, as I mentioned earlier, the data collaboration.org, which is the alliance. And I see Chris there putting the link there. Thank you, Chris. And you can learn more about the broader shift toward Dataware, and the rally cry there is access, not copies, as that's kind of summing it all up in a simple hashtag. But so you can kind of look at it from both perspectives: standards and open collaboration versus a vendor solution that you can bring into your enterprise.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Thanks for all the information, Dan. I can't wait to do a 2.0 session where we can, talk more about Sinchie in detail, about Dataware, and I'm sure you'll come up with another new and interesting term that we can learn from you. So thank you once again for doing this, and definitely happy to send folks your way. I already see a few people wanting to do the demo, wanting to learn more about it, and I'm sure the team will take care of that. But thank you, audience, for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to have you, and great questions by our audience as well. So thank you once again.
All right, thanks everyone.